start.
In 5, 4, 3, 2. I know you see.
Sometimes I'll probably get a bring. Let me get my Galaxy S10 Plus. Make sure that's working. Yeah, boy. Okay.
3 people watching. Hello,
Hello,
my
everyone.
3 people.
Sam Jones.
I'm gonna say everyone's names.
Krishna, go ahead.
Harry Heron.
It's broken again. I don't know what causes this. Seriously.
Maybe our tech just sucks.
Like,
Okay.
I test it and it's perfectly fine.
I'm
and then
sorry.
as soon as we go live, it's like, never mind. Say goodbye to the multicam, everyone. Hope you enjoy the wide angle.
Delete this stream forever.
No, I mean,
Okay, I'm gonna say
people
everyone's
are here
name.
for the audio, so
Harry Heron.
we'll stick with that.
Sam Jones. Krishna. Cameron. Duarte. Tech yourself.
Tech yourself.
Malcolm. Ben Close.
No.
Mohammed.
It's
Marcel. Hello, everyone.
Welcome to the Tailosive Talks podcast.
Me llamo Pedro y vivo en una casa de cartón. A cardboard house. Is that what he says?
No idea.
My name is Pedro. I live in a cardboard house or a carton house.
Plastic house, perhaps.
Cartón.
Carton. A carton house. Maybe he's like a small animal, like a mouse who lives in a sawed in half milk carton. Something like that.
I feel like even mice need something bigger than that, though.
That's true.
All right,
Anywho.
should we do our thing?
Yeah, let's do our thing. Go ahead.
Well, what if we did it at the same time?
Both of us?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Ready? 3, 2, 1.
Hello.
Welcome back. Why would we start with hello?
I don't know. Okay. Welcome back. Ready?
3, 2, 1.
Welcome back,
to
ladies and gentlemen.
Okay, we don't have this down.
Okay.
Go ahead. You just do it.
Okay.
Do it your way.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of Tailosive Talks, the podcast edition.
Why did you think I would get that down in that order? I say,
It's
welcome
your
back to the
mind
Tailosive Talks podcast.
Sorry.
And
okay.
you do it all specifically. You're like,
Do you want me
welcome,
to start
ladies
over?
and
I'll start
gentlemen,
over.
to the... No, it's fine. Let's just keep
that
going.
was totally messed up. I apologize.
You say, welcome back to another episode of Tailosive Talks, the podcast edition. And I'm just like,
sorry.
how would I know that? How did I know
Okay,
say
can I
it
try
that
again,
way?
please?
Okay, last try. Even if it doesn't work, this is the last one.
Last try, really?
Yes.
Okay.
You got this.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Tailosive Talks podcast.
Hey.
Close enough. How's
enough.
everyone doing tonight? How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm good.
I'm feeling
Yeah.
ambitious. I've got too many
Why?
things on my mind. It's not good.
What is on your mind?
I am just, now that we have greenlit the special announcement and the moving process, I'm just looking everywhere at things that need to go and things that I need to start packing up. And now that's all I want to do. So, as you know.
So you want to get started like ASAP.
Yeah, I want to get moving day process to be as smooth as possible by moving everything basically as soon as I can. That way, when we do eventually, like, there will be one day where we have to move the computers and the cameras.
Right.
That day will be the day that, like, okay, it's an official move. But everything else has to be ready before that happens. So I'm feeling ambitious and I'm anxious. You know me. I don't like waiting.
Yeah, I know you wanted to start working on the soundproofing tiles.
We have a ton of soundproofing tiles that we didn't even hang up here because I bought a ton of them. And obviously I'll be working in a much smaller space. So I'm tempted to just use all those extra tiles and start hanging them up already. So yeah, I'm ready to get going on that. I'm feeling, motivated. I want to get going.
Well, it will happen soon enough.
Oh, yes.
And
I'll probably start that tomorrow.
yeah,
Yeah.
tomorrow.
I all the soundproofing on that side of the tech room is like never seen. And it was purely there. We hung it like that because we didn't know what to do with it.
Right.
And
I just
we were going
realized
to
that
show.
it's never in the actual film.
Well, when we did our reveal for the office and setup and everything, I wanted it to look kind of cool, and our paint job was horrible. So I thought that would help spice it up a little bit.
Yeah.
But it serves no functional purpose. And now I'm just looking at it like, all of that can go, that can go,
Yeah.
that can go. So
We
now I'm
just need to get some
let's
T-pins.
get moving. Yes.
We can start taking them down tonight if you want.
I would love that.
Okay. Well, let's do that after this.
And Walmart has
T-pins?
T-pins.
Okay.
'Cause
You've convinced me. We'll go after.
Yes, thank you. I love you so much. You're the best.
This boy. I mean, this man.
Do you guys
really,
not like the thumbtacks on the soundproofing? I want to get their thoughts on it.
Better. You see how it like causes a
I see it, but
hole?
look at how much of that shows up on camera.
I see it on camera.
Well, you're
I think it would look nicer if it was just like in the crack, like the pin in the crack.
Probably. I just remember how hanging all these soundproofing. Me and Wyatt actually hung all of the soundproofing tiles in the tech room and the podcast room all by ourselves.
And how many were there? Like 100?
Over 200.
Over 200.
I remember because if you
paid
bought
like a ton of money for them, didn't you? Like $99.
Well, if you bought them in bulk, they were cheaper. So it was like you could buy. I think it was like you could buy 48 of them for like $60. So they're more than $1 a piece.
That's crazy. And you really cut a bunch of them in half and like in random quarters.
You have to. But if you order 200 of them, it's like $150. So if you buy a ton, it's like now you're paying less than $1 a piece.
Yeah.
And I knew that I was going to need a bunch for here, so that's why I bought the full 200. And they're very light. And the whole reason I use thumbtacks, a lot of studios use residue and glue, is for this specific reason. You can take them off very easily and they won't get damaged. These things are super fragile.
You're right. They tear up
and
easily.
if you breathe on them the wrong way, they'll fall apart. So that's why I wanted to use the thumbtacks, which I'd seen people suggest because I had a ton of thumbtacks. I knew that would be cheap, and I also knew that if I ever wanted to take them somewhere else, it's just pull them right out. But luckily, in the new setup, hopefully we'll have 100% less complaints about the soundproofing being off, because I always get those comments. I think people still comment about that, like on the background of the tech streams. People are like, "Oh, the tiles are off; they're crooked." That won't be a problem on the new set because they're not going to be.
They're going to be like right next to each other.
They're going to be like this, except not diagonal. They'll be flat.
Can we have it like this though, in like our new podcast setup? Because I think that
we could, but then you have to cut them all up like that.
Well, they're already cut up, so let's use the ones from this.
Well, those are. I guess you could
use the ones from this wall and put them there.
Sure, if you want.
Since that won't be like until.
I've already learned a lot from setting up this, how I want to do things differently in the next one. So the T's too high. As cool as it is when you walk in and that it's like, oh, here's the podcast room and the T's there. You notice that when we do our streams, even before when we used to like record on the couch and the chairs, or we're just sitting at a table like this, the T is so high it's out of the frame, barely in the shot at that point.
Well, so, can I ask you something?
Yeah.
Is the T too high or is the table too low?
You think we should be up that high?
We should be like on bar stools and like, yeah, let's raise this.
Didn't you want to record from a couch so that you could lay down?
Lay down? I never said that.
Yeah. I thought you wanted to be like more comfortable when you recorded. Now you want to be like, bless you. Now you want to be like at a bar.
Not a bar.
Wow, look, they said didn't notice the thumbtacks until you just pointed that out.
You're welcome. Them clothes. Now you notice them.
Guys, I love your content, even though I disagree with you in like 2 things. Oh my God. But guys, truly love your content. By the way, fun fact, I also started my YouTube channel with an iPad. Oh, congrats. Cool. Hope that goes well for you. And nice. Bravo wants us to tell romantic stories.
Okay.
You got one?
Yes. Once upon a time, there was an ugly barnacle.
Oh, okay.
He was so ugly that everybody died. The end.
She loves that one. You told that yesterday.
I tell Drew that when he can't go to sleep.
You
That's
said,
his bedtime story.
Can I tell you a bedtime story? And then she says that. Helps every time.
Yes.
Oh, man. What was on our list tonight, hon? We had some deep things we wanted to get into. Enough talk about the set.
Kind of controversial things. I didn't want to like go too crazy on them.
No, I don't think they're controversial, but they're interesting.
They could possibly be controversial or polarizing.
No, they're not.
Okay.
Yes, they are.
So you wanted to talk about separating art from the artist.
Yeah, there was without getting into the specifics of it, I don't really want the discussion to be about what happened because it's very divisive right now. There's been a lot of talk because Ethan on the H3 podcast went off on Michael Jackson after watching Leaving Neverland. And there's a lot of people who are in agreement and a lot of people who are in disagreement. I haven't seen the documentary, so I'm not going to make a statement of I believe this happened or anything. I don't know enough about it to make a stance on it, but it rose up a more interesting debate in my mind, which is what happens when, like, a lot of situations like the Me Too movement, you know, where people find out that very, very famous and rich and powerful celebrities have done terrible things and people have kept it a secret for a long time. How do you, the thing I wanted to talk about was separating art from the artist. Can you, and should we appreciate like the works or the content someone produces, even if we find out that behind the scenes they're a terrible person or that they did terrible things? Is like engaging in their content or in their art, whether it be music or photography or videography or film, any one of those things is engaging in it wrong? Or is it okay to say, all right, this is what they created and this is what I like, but I don't like the people behind it,
Right.
you know? So I was going to ask how you felt about that.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting situation because I feel that society tends to give a lot more leniency to celebrities that mess up versus like, you know, those college stories where like frat guys like do bad things to women or vice versa. I don't know how the statistics are, but usually it's
back and forth. Yeah.
Right. Like usually people have their pitchforks out more towards like the not famous people, if that makes sense.
Well, sure, because they're just strangers, you know.
Yeah,
and they only know
but
one
when you
part
have,
about
like,
them, which is the accusation that's being made. That
when
could be
you
true.
have an emotional connection, or you think you do, like to someone that you've looked up to and you've idolized.
You don't want to believe.
Right. To see
They're
like
wrong.
that side of them, or to even like hear accusations, like you just want to say, no, that's not true. You know, you want to deny it because this is someone that like is
Feel like
perfect.
you know them. Yeah.
Right. It's like if I ever found out that you did anything, like I'd be, because I know you so well. I definitely like.
You'd be quick to defend.
Yeah, but I don't know how other people would react, like your fans, if they found out something that happened. But
well, luckily I haven't had in my time really. I never was a Jackson fan, to be honest. Like I didn't love his music. I didn't.
Jackson.
Jackson. Sorry, I don't know what you heard, but
Mitchell Jackson.
I genuinely, a lot of people don't believe this, but I genuinely did not know who he was until the day he died because it was all over the news. Before that, I was like, who's Michael Jackson? I never heard of him. But I was also like 10 years old. So it wasn't like.
When he died?
Yeah.
You were 13.
When did he die?
2011.
Okay, still. When I was 13, I was probably listening to movie soundtracks. I didn't listen to pop music until much later in life. I didn't really pay attention to that kind of thing. But I haven't had someone that I looked up to and I was a big fan of that ended up being exposed or turned out to have
wrong. He died in 2009.
Okay.
So you were 11.
So neither of us were right. But basically.
Or 2008. I don't know.
The start of 2009, I would have been.
He
10.
started dying for multiple years, I guess.
Okay, well, I don't know when he died. Either way, I'm just trying to make the argument that I'm not attached. I was not a big fan of Michael Jackson, and I barely knew who he was when he was around. But I haven't found someone that I'm a huge fan of that ended up being terrible behind the scenes, and having some giant like exposed story or something like that. So I don't really have that huge experience, though a lot of people loved Michael Jackson. I can tell that he was incredibly
people, like,
loved.
Had parades and like.
Not
parades, like giant vigils and stuff.
He was a huge icon.
Yeah.
To music and changed the industry for a ton of people and his dancing. So I could tell he was very loved. So at the same time, I totally get why there's an immediate, I would say, reaction to defend as soon as someone hears bad things about him. But yeah, I wanted to talk about that because I didn't feel like there was an easy answer. I don't think it's as black and white because there's a truth to it all that, you know, no human really is perfect. There's
Right.
people we admire or people we look at and say like, oh my God, there's nothing wrong with them and they can do no wrong. But even the nicest figure you can imagine has flaws and has mistakes and regrets in their life. We
Right.
all,
But does that excuse them of their actions? Like, because he was famous, I feel a lot of it was pushed under the rug.
yeah.
Because there have been accusations for pretty much as long as I can remember, like years and years. But now I feel like it's coming out so recently and he's not here to defend himself. So I don't know like what the process is of figuring out, are these allegations true or false? I didn't watch the H3 podcast about it, but what did they say?
Well, Ethan was very much leaning towards they're true. He was like, based on what he'd seen, he was convinced that they were all real. And he was like, well, he wouldn't say these things if it weren't true, and this wouldn't be brought up. But it sounds like the documentary was very heavily one-sided, which I also think is something to consider whenever you watch any story or any situation. Like we watched, I think we stopped watching it, but we watched a lot of Making a Murderer. And I don't think the people making that documentary were wrong. I do think the guy in that documentary was framed, but I do also acknowledge the fact that the people making that documentary very clearly have a position that they're trying to push,
They're
and they're trying
biased
to
against him.
convince you. So
And he wasn't perfect either, so
No.
they kind of like used his previous actions as fuel for like the newly
but
accused
they were absolutely like, it wasn't an unbiased or fair documentary. That's not to say they're wrong. I like I said, given the evidence they presented, I do think they're correct. But they were clearly like they were pulling on the emotional strings of like, he was a nice guy, so innocent. And it's like
You're saying Netflix.
the Netflix is just the distributor. Whoever made Making a Murderer, the production
Netflix
crew.
made it.
Well, they
You
paid
know, like
for it.
Netflix originals.
Yeah, but there are people who Netflix originals aren't the same two
Netflix
guys.
is a person.
Duffer Brothers are one group. The people
Okay.
who made Making Murder another group. It's like
Yeah,
saying
it
Disney.
was-
Yeah, there was a certain viewpoint they were
Right.
pushing from. So I imagine documentaries that are highlighting one side of the story are obviously going to convince people. At the end of the day, though, like all that matters is like the people involved know what happened.
Well, I think it's important for their action, not their actions, but their past to be validated as well. Like if they say that it happened and no one else believes them, I feel like that's even worse. That they're just living in this world where like people would rather believe the perpetrator, you know, the one that's
because he was famous,
right.
and he was
So it's
beloved
like,
by
so
many
his
people.
actions have no consequences, like. But I don't know what happened exactly. I haven't really read.
No,
up
like I
too
said, I'm
much on
not
it.
professionals in this, but let's move away from the Jackson example. But like another classic sad story about that is Bill Cosby. You know, he was an amazing comedian, and before the stories came out about him, I loved listening to his stand up. Me and my family would sit around the computer and just like listen to the Bill Cosby stand-ups he used to do. They were hilarious. And we would watch the Cosby
And
Show
they're like family
growing up.
friendly, right?
Oh yeah,
Which
he was super wholesome. I mean, he would get a little raunchy here and there, but for the most
Yeah.
part, really, really wholesome,
So
funny.
doesn't that make it more ironic that
Right.
it turns out
That's,
wasn't
it
that
just makes you
wholesome?
feel gross inside, you know? Like when you
Right.
find out about what he did, you're like, it's like, now I can't like enjoy this anymore. And in my opinion, that's an example of something I can't separate. Mostly probably because I think it's easy to separate a person's character from like their music. Because when someone's singing, you know, that's not how they naturally speak. You know, that's it's a side of their personality, but it's not like
Do you
having a
think
conversation.
stand-up comedy is different.
Stand-up
and
comedy, it by all means is a performance, but it feels like you're getting to know them better. Because a lot of stand-up is legit just like pretending you're having a conversation. But the person's
Like
really funny.
Anecdotal.
Yeah, and they're telling stories of their life, and you feel like you're getting to know them better and their personality and how they act. I would say some people might disagree, but I would say stand-up is a more intimate way to get to know someone than music. Like, I can really like someone's music and not really know much about them, because a lot of the time we go there for the notes and the tunes and
yeah, it depends
the
on who
harmony.
you're listening to. Some people
Sure.
get really like deep and symbolic in their lyrics, and you can learn a lot about a person and how they feel through their lyrics and through the song and through the melody. But I understand what you mean about
It's not as day to day. With
Yeah.
someone's music, you get kind of big picture ideas, I think, and more. Whereas stand up feels like you're just having a conversation with someone, and so you felt like if everyone kind of felt like they knew Bill Cosby, like he was a friend, kind of like just an average everyday guy, and he get the family dilemma that all of us. It was relatable, kind of like, you know, a Ray Romano or a John Mulaney kind of stand up comedian now. Like, we get that, and we relate to a lot of his life circumstances. So when you find out that they do this terrible thing, personally, it's ruined his work for me. I can't separate the art from the artist in that case. I cannot enjoy his stand-up anymore or his TV show. I've roughly tried to watch it or tried to listen to his old work, and all I'm thinking about is the terrible things he did.
right.
And it's sad because it all unfolded like in the last probably 10 years of his life. He's not dead yet, but he's close. He's not doing well.
He's in his 80s, right?
I think he's in his late 80s, and in prison.
Do you know how long he's been sentenced for, or is he?
I'm pretty sure he's sentenced for long enough that he's gonna die in jail. And what a terrible what do
Do
you
you
call
feel
it?
like that's a waste of talent?
I mean, yeah. I mean, obviously, I don't think he should like come back, or you know, like it can't be. In a lot of instances, I think it's fair to say you can't really be forgiven for that.
Right.
Particularly because of how I think he handled the situation in the news and stuff. It was he kind of didn't want to admit it or address it. He was just kind of saying like, I don't remember. And him being so old, maybe he genuinely doesn't, but that just speaks to how sad it is.
I didn't really follow the story that closely, but I feel like everyone should be held accountable for their actions, whether
Absolutely.
you're famous or
Right.
you're a nobody. Like, we should all be held at the same standard.
For
and
sure.
I don't think that's the way it is currently in our society. I think definitely if you have money, if you have fame, if you have power, like, you can get off pretty easily on crimes that you commit.
It's true. And yeah, it's really shameful that it works that way a lot right now. But can you think of I mean, we were just thinking of Michael Jackson's songs before we came over here. Of like they were catchy, you know, and I can still kind of get in the groove a little bit, even knowing some of these potential accusations that have been made against him. And it's like, I don't know, it just feels a little easier to separate for some reason.
Music rather than
stand
up.
I don't know.
Well, let me put it in a different way. Like, what if, let's say Einstein was found out that he did some controversial thing.
Yeah.
Does that mean everything that he discovered and he, like, you know, all the equations he created and like all the stuff that he did, does that mean that's not worth anything anymore? Like,
Well, no.
So do you think
clearly
intellectual
not.
property or like intellectual stuff like that is more easily permitted or like separated from the person that he is?
Yeah, because I think
It's not personal.
It's not entertainment, you know.
Okay.
Like I'm sure there were tons of things wrong with people who have discovered things that we do and use on our daily lives today. I could take it a step further back and think of like our founding fathers for the United States.
How they like owned slaves and stuff.
Yeah, there was like things that they did that we would heavily consider wrong and probably looked lesser on women and on people of different skin color, and yet they still pioneered and brought ideas that we use and treasure today in our government and how the governments should work and how different they wanted to be from the British, you know, monarchy, and they wanted to separate from that. And we do appreciate that, but still a ton of things they were for we don't support at all.
Right. So
And I think Einstein's a good example of like, let's say if Einstein did some terrible thing and we found out about it, it's like still the contributions he made to science and technology we use to this day and are going to take advantage of. So,
right. But some people may argue like that the music has changed the world and has changed how music is, and people could say his music's like therapy to them or something.
Oh, sure.
So
Very common.
I mean, that still doesn't like excuse him of anything, but
no, it doesn't make it right, but it's not like to me that's more science and technology stuff that you can separate from a person because it's still fact, you know. Like we can work with E equals MC squared and we can apply that to other things, whereas I think entertainment's a little bit different because that's just like what
it's
what
not
are
really
we
benefiting humankind. Like,
well, it is in a more indirect way, but it's like it's what do you call it? Some things that bring a smile to your face. And I think probably you could make the argument that there's like other forms of that would go to support someone who's more, you know, respectful to others and not as corrupt. So that they're saying like there's alternative comedians or alternative music you could listen to that wouldn't be supporting that idea.
Well, this kind of also goes into not just people, but what about companies that say something controversial? Like I think, was it Chick-fil-A? They didn't support like gay people or something.
I don't remember the whole story there. So I don't want to try to...
a bunch of people boycotted them basically. But yeah, I guess it's a little bit different if it's a company.
Yeah.
Because people enjoy chicken sandwiches, so should that controversy get in the way of you enjoying a meal? Like, ultimately, everything you do.
Kind of the similar idea of like, I don't want to support what they stood for and I don't want to support or their legacy or their family. So I'm choosing to not listen or to not partake in their history.
So you better go to KFC instead.
Yeah. I don't know. I think businesses are so, they're so big and they've got so many different people involved that it's like, you're really boycotting whatever corporate or media agent declared such and such. I mean, most enterprise companies that big probably have very different opinions internally. Like the idea that Tim Cook says one thing and somehow every person who works at Apple agrees with that, probably not true. You know, there's probably a bunch more diverse, and they probably support things that you wouldn't believe in.
Right. People are saying read the chat. So would you like to read some of the comments?
We could. Yeah, we can't just do nonstop chat, but we do have special episodes when we do that. But yeah, they're bringing up points. Freedom of speech. I haven't seen the Michael Jackson documentary.
Was that the Neverland one?
Yeah, the Leaving Neverland. But
St.
I don't.
Jones says, if everyone boycotted every company they disagree with something over, no one would buy anything.
Yeah, there's no way you can. There's probably no way you could find out what each person you're supporting is in favor of.
Right.
So to a certain extent, you kind of have to just draw the line. I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I think it's actually better for companies to just stay neutral. That way, you know, they're catering to a wider audience.
It's really difficult to a lot of the time.
To stay neutral?
Yeah, because a lot of the time, not stating a viewpoint can be considered protest. A lot of companies, like if people or press ask them, like, what's your stance on this? And you say no comment, then people are like, oh, so you don't care. You know, like, so when companies choose to not take a viewpoint or take a support system on anything, it can unintentionally cause backlash. So
that's true.
It's a tough place for them to be.
Yeah. KH says you should get a pet. And actually, if you guys look over here to the very center of this table, we have a new pet. Well, it's a plant. His name is Leafy.
Yeah, because it has no chin.
I don't know what that means. But
I get it.
It's an aloe vera plant, and I had 3, and I killed one of them. So now there's Leafy, and then there's one more from Florida, which we smuggled. But
I keep telling her you got to put it in the sun.
Well,
Plants need sun.
the one by the sink is doing fine. That doesn't get sunlight, so.
That thing's a boss. I mean, I don't know how that thing's still alive, but
that one's thick too.
I think I do know why the other ones died.
Why?
There's no sun. They need sunlight.
I think I watered it too much.
Well, that could be part of it, but I'm just saying that plants' food is sunlight. That's where they get all their energy.
Sometimes.
All the time, unless you're talking about plants that live at the bottom.
Well, then explain why the one by the sink is alive.
I don't know, but you're talking like a anti-vax mom who's like,
hey.
No, I'm saying
Wow.
like, who's like all my kids that didn't die are fine. Yeah, that's what.
That's an awful.
No, I know it's awful. I'm just saying, like, if you are having this problem between 4 different kids, and most of them die, but one lives, you're like, well, he made it. So it's like, well, there's still a problem, though.
That's actually a good point, and it brings us to our next topic.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
So
let's bring that up.
Read an article today. First of all, what do you think about vaccinations? Are you for them, against them?
I was vaccinated when I was a kid.
When was the last time that you got a shot?
Oh, I can't remember. Probably middle school, I think.
Yeah. This is kind of scary. I don't think I've had a shot in like 10 years.
Well, usually vaccinations happen very young, so.
Yeah, but you're supposed to get them like throughout your life as well.
Okay. Didn't know that.
Like in the article I read, it said you're supposed to get DTaP, which is diphtheria.
Okay.
Tetanus and pertussis vaccinations. You're supposed to get that like every 10 years in your adult life. And it's been 10 years and I don't like needles at all.
Yeah.
Like my mom wasn't anti-vax. I just,
really? I didn't know that.
You didn't know that my mom is not anti-vax? That's a double negative.
Okay. You said that your mom is anti-vax.
No, isn't.
Okay. That's a little confusing.
Isn't.
So
she likes vaccinations.
I was confused by your wording because you told me I didn't know your mom was anti-vax, but you meant she is pro-vax.
She is pro-vaccinations.
Put it that way. Okay, thank you.
Yes, and in the article I read today, I'll read you guys a short part of it. This was from.
It's very, very sad that there are people who still don't support it.
Yeah. I think whenever there's something, there's always going to be the opposite. Like,
it's really resulted in some horrifying stories for kids, which is a shame because they don't know what's good for them. And
that's true.
Their lives are being controlled by their parents who don't know any better. And now they're paying the consequences for it. It's terrifying.
Michael says, needles are better than deadly viruses. Yes, that's true. I agree.
Very true.
I'm just a baby, and I need Drew to hold my hand when I do it. Okay, anyways, ABC News says, unvaccinated boy is first tetanus case in his state in decades. So basically, this 6-year-old, his mom or his parents, it doesn't really go too much into his family, but they did not get the boy vaccinated. And he was playing outside in like a farm and got cut and got dirt in his cut.
Yep. And
they treated it at home, but it ended up getting infected. And then he was having like muscle spasms and like weird things happening in his body.
Oh, God.
And then at one point, his jaw like locked and he couldn't even eat or drink.
Oh, my God.
And they finally took him to the hospital and turns out he had tetanus, which obviously can be prevented by vaccines.
Right.
And he was there. He was hospitalized for 57 days.
Oof, my God.
57 days.
And how
47, old? He's 6 years old.
6 years old.
And 47 of those days, he was in intensive care and racked up almost $1 million in medical costs, which is crazy because, like, those shots are, maybe a couple $100.
Right.
I don't know. But, yeah, this was in Oregon and the first case in nearly 30 years, thanks to this family who didn't care to get him vaccinated, which is.
And what was their stance on vaccination after the hospital time, after the kid got out?
They still refused to get him like continually vaccinated. Let me read the sentence.
I don't understand that. There's some kind of mental problem at that point. If you can't see the solution there, whatever you think the cons of vaccines are, how could that be worth it at that point? How could you decide that's not? I mean, I'm not a parent. I'm not the one to tell them exactly how to raise their kids. But to me, it's just so obvious to look at the evidence to see how like harmful this is, both financially and to the kid, of just the simple choice of like, well, I don't want to vaccinate them. But
Right.
like, what's the
And
counter?
I don't really see any proof that, you know, there is something bad that happens because of vaccines. Like, obviously, there are people who claim like autism or vaccines can cause autism, but I don't think there's any scientific proof of that. Anyways, the last sentence of this article says, the Oregon family ultimately decided against a follow-up DTaP,
Oof.
diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis vaccination, and any other recommended immunizations for the boy after his recovery from tetanus, according to the report. So yeah, basically after he got super sick and racked up like $800,000 in medical bills,
There's no way they paid that, right?
I am guessing the state or the
they're having to pay it
hospitals
off, yeah, or something like that.
I don't know how that works, but yeah, it's really sad, guys. And if
What do you
there are
think?
any
Like,
if there are any
Go ahead.
anti-vaxxers in the chat, please tell me your point of view, because I want to understand why you think like that's okay. I feel really bad for the kid who, you know, had no choice in this.
yeah, I don't. Do you think like at that point, at the point that the kid, I'm sure there's been cases of death, right?
Yeah.
Because of the non-vaccination. So like with that being a possibility, like do you think that there needs to be involvement with that from
government?
from higher ups? Like that's a messy field because you don't want to get to the point where the government can start telling parents what they can and can't do. But to a certain extent you have to. Obviously you can't like there's like child protective services that can say like you can't beat your kids and you can't not feed them or
But I feel
I've
like
heard
this
those horror stories of
is
them like locking kids up and not
Yeah.
letting them interact in public or teaching them anything. I've heard those terrifying stories, and I'm like, obviously that's not okay. So when do we draw the line? You know, when is it
feel like
not
if,
okay?
If a child's health is in danger or, you know, at risk, I think at that point there should be, I don't know, some sort of standard or law to protect the child. Because I remember like when I went into 7th grade, they said everyone had to get DTaP.
Yeah.
I think that was, you know, for the school's protection to make sure that, you know, everyone's okay and that they couldn't be held liable to like some sort of outbreak happening.
And as Michael said in the chat, it's important for, I understand why a lot of parents out there, maybe uninformed parents, would be hesitant to get vaccines because it sounds scary that you would inject the disease into your kid or anyone, doesn't have to just be your kid, but like to inject the disease into you. But Michael's pointing out, which is a fact about the very definition of a vaccine, they can't harm you because it's a weakened version of the virus. And essentially, how you're able to fight off viruses in your body is your immune system is able to learn how to fight it off using a specific antibody. And the vaccine, all it's doing is teaching your immune system what that disease is. It's not giving the disease to it. It's giving you an extremely skimmed down version, just enough so that your immune system can be like, oh, this is a new threat. Now I got the hang of it. I know how to fight it. It's quite honestly an amazing thing.
I don't know
how the body works.
How vaccines would work though with people with weakened immune systems already. Like,
Okay.
I mean, I'm not like trying to defend anti-vax people.
No, I understand. You're just looking at it from multiple perspectives.
Yeah. Someone mentioned in the chat that flu vaccines don't really work, and I kind of agree with that.
No, they don't always work because it's often a prediction. They don't know
true.
where
so
the
there's
flu
different
virus is going.
strains every year
So it's,
or every
yeah,
season.
It's not a 100%. The flu is something constantly changing, and it's adapting over time. It's like, okay, that didn't work, so now it's trying this attempt at the virus. So it's kind of like predicting the future to try to get an accurate flu shot. But the vaccines that we do have protection for, like tetanus, like that's something we know. It's like, okay,
Right.
we've established that's a deadly
Yeah.
disease, but we've also established the vaccine for it. We know that vaccine can't hurt you. if we just teach your immune system what it is, that way if tetanus does actually come around, the body goes, oh, okay, I know how to fight this, and it fights it off, no problem. But
yeah, in the article it said the CDC has figured out that this vaccine for, tetanus has decreased the amount of tetanus outbreaks by like 97% since the 1940s when it was implemented.
Down. It's gone way down.
So I feel like if there's a chance to, or like a way to prevent your child from going through something like as scary and like risking their health, then I would go for it.
Do you think parents who don't vaccinate and then the kids get severely sick or die, should the parents be punished for that? Is that a punishable offense?
I don't want to be the one throwing rocks. I really don't know what the solution is to this.
Okay, that's fair.
Okay, we have someone in.
It's a difficult.
Oh, dang it! There was someone in the chat who said they were anti-vax, but the message got deleted. Oh, can I see it?
I don't know. I don't know how to, but
it says right there. Okay, so this person, I'm not going to name, said, I have 2 children and I chose not to vaccinate them because the shots they take for prevention contain more than 30 other elements in most cases. Think, people. Think for yourselves. Oh, he was just joking. Come on, people. Let's not joke. We're talking about something serious here.
Take it serious. And mods, you don't have to delete it even if it's not true. That's okay. We can decide for ourselves if we don't want that. But it's a tough topic of what to do about it, because I think everyone's for the most part on the same page of when situations like the boy you described needed that help. And it's sad that like even in 2019, when the health technology has gotten so advanced and so effective, that we still
and easily accessible too, especially in the U.S. I feel like it's easier to access these vaccines as opposed to other I think
countries. It's free for a lot of people. Like a lot of schools provide it for free.
Yeah, but there are people, let's say Africa, who would love to have vaccines and be protected from diseases, but they don't have that option. And I don't know, I feel like we're kind of taking this for granted.
Those opportunities definitely are taken for granted here. It's just kind of sad. It makes you think about the future, because for a vast majority of humans, we are living in the future already. We're living in a time where we have all these cures, and to imagine that there's still humans that won't accept it in the future. Kind of like, can you imagine if one day we discovered an accurate, like reliable cure for cancer, and yet people still didn't do it? Like that would be mind-boggling to us.
I don't want to be so closed-minded that there's like no possibility that they have some merit to their argument.
I'd like to hear one, but I
know
don't,
as of now,
I haven't heard a good
science is backing up, our claims, but maybe in 20, 50 years, something will come out saying like, wow, this actually was causing all these diseases. We didn't see, the correlation in the data because we didn't have enough data to look over. But I thought you brought up an interesting point when you said, or when you asked when government should like step in these cases. There's something I recently learned about. I can't remember exactly what it's called, but it's like homeschooling, except there's no school. So basically, there are certain parents who decide to keep their children at home instead of letting them go to school, and they don't teach them anything. Like they basically let the kids decide what they want to learn, and if they don't want to learn anything, then they don't have to. The video I watched, like she let them go to sleep at whatever time they wanted. They could watch TV when they wanted. Yeah,
didn't parent.
Yeah,
they just kind of hung out with their kids. Look for the video,
and we can talk about it more next time. But I feel like in that case, those kids are going to be at a huge disadvantage once they get older, and
it's a huge shame.
Right, like when they're 18, they're expected to, start figuring out what they want for themselves, whether they want to go to college or start working. But if they've been told their whole life, you can do whatever you want and there's no consequences.
Yeah, no limits.
Right.
Those are key years.
It's lack of like self-discipline. You're not learning
even from a young age, even before you
Right.
start learning to speak and you're just learning to walk, like the teaching of a lot of like simple messages of like, you know, mom and dad are here and mom and dad are gone, or how to ask for things politely and things like that. That starts at such a young age, and it is fixable when they're older, but it is so much harder when they get past the growing up phase, when they start learning how to talk and how to act with other people. It is so hard to change someone who during those early years learned it a certain way because that's their default. And they kind of said like a kid's mind when it's young is like a sponge. It's super absorbent, and it'll take
Malleable.
in, and you learn languages much faster when you're younger because you're still learning how to speak and all that compared to when you grow up. When you're in your
You're more
20s,
set in your ways.
changing your personality and changing the way you speak and think is very much more difficult. So
Right. So in the case of the no homeschooling, do you feel like that's child neglect? Do you think that the government should step in that case and be like,
I don't know. That's a
these
tough one.
kids need to know how to do basic math and need to know how the world works, and you know, if you're not teaching them, then
I think you can get in trouble for that, right?
I don't know.
Because I do have a little bit of experience in this. It was a long time ago, but I was homeschooled
Yes.
for a year.
This wasn't homeschool though. They literally had no structure to it.
No, I understand, but I'm saying that even when you do homeschooling, it's not completely outside of the school district. A lot of people don't know this. A lot of people who either grew up in the private school or grew up in public school think that homeschool just means that your parents teach you things.
But
And it's not that
you're
simple.
enrolled in that system. I'm saying if these people never enroll their kids,
Yeah.
who's gonna know they even have kids?
Well, I'm saying that is a punishable offense.
Okay.
I'm saying I don't think it's legal, and I don't think it's acceptable to the state or to the federal government for you to not enroll your kids, even if you want homeschool. Like I had homeschooling when I was in the 5th grade.
Sorry, I'm
And
really cold.
It's okay. It's all right. And basically, what it means is you still have to take state testing. You still have to go to a certain building, and they ask you a certain set of questions and a certain set of standards. When you're growing up, they expect you to know certain things and take certain tests at a certain age. Even if you don't want to go to a public school or don't want to go to a private school, they issue you the same textbooks that other kids get. It like you're still within the district that the schools require people to learn in. It's not yeah, and like you said, it's incredibly damaging to the kid when the parent decides, I'm just going to blow off the education
the parent
part.
doesn't see it as wrong though. They think they're doing the right thing for their child to let them have, you know, free expression and like do what you want, like feel good about yourself. And there should be some parts of that in the learning process, but there needs to be some structure, because how is the kid going to learn how to live in a society where there is structure once they're older? Like, you know, most people have a job, you know, they pay bills. And if the child thinks that everything is just so laissez-faire and you can do whatever you want, then that's going to be a shock for them.
Yeah, they're going to be stuck with those parents' choices with the rest of their lives. So that's why I think it is fair for the government to step in and say, no, you can't just blow off education and say, nah, my kids don't need to learn and they'll just work at the farm and everything. And it's kind of interesting in a way that the government can make that kind of choice for the parent,
Right.
but ultimately knowing how important being literate and knowing basic math and all that's going to be needed later in life just to pay taxes and to drive and to become a responsible human. It is very much required. As a functioning society, we do need that.
It's interesting how not too long ago, probably even like 100 years ago, there were people in very rural areas who didn't go to school, probably just farmed their whole lives.
Right.
But I don't think the government could have controlled everything that closely.
No. Well, they still can't because people still do this. Obviously, it still happens.
If you have like a piece of land in the woods, then who's to know that you're having children out there and letting them do whatever they want?
Michael brings up an interesting point I was
What did
going
he
to ask you about. Well, kind of a bigger point. He's saying they should teach kids how to pay taxes when they're in school. I was going to ask you if there's any topics or subjects do you think that should be taught in public education that aren't right now, or maybe not highlighted as much as they should be.
Yeah, I agree. My school had like a life class, preparation class, and they taught you basic things like how to budget, or like I never took the class, but I heard about it, like how to apply for college and like basic things like that. But yeah, I agree. There should be a class on like how to change a tire. I still don't know how to change a tire, even though multiple people have explained it to me. I've never done it. So I don't
you'd
know.
say that's like a basic. I mean, I don't think in the long term we're going to need to know.
Because everyone's going to have Teslas?
I think in the long term, yeah, it's going to get to the point where the cars don't want you to. But
Maybe.
I agree.
So,
no, that's a good functional skill that wouldn't hurt.
Yeah, how to do your taxes.
For me, I think we extremely underappreciate the value of budgeting in schools. And I think we focus way too much on advanced algebra. As someone who went through the public education system, I'm not saying
you how to not go into $300,000 in debt.
Yeah, they don't teach you, but they, at a young age, when you're like 17, 18, start pitching to you why you need to go like hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, and you don't have any experience on budgeting or on finances.
Right.
Yet you go through this school system, and they're like, well, just get loans, and get into debt so that you can afford any college you want, and just take these loans. And when you're young, you don't know that they pitch you. Of course, they want you to go to these colleges, and they want you to be up in these big old universities. So they tell you, oh no, you can pay it off, and you'll find a job, and it'll help you pay it off. But they don't realize in the long term, you're going to be stuck with that debt without a way to pay it off for years.
For the rest of your life, potentially.
But you have all this calculus knowledge that you can't apply to anything. So, like, I think, in my opinion, that's the thing that gets the least amount of attention that it should. I think, not that calculus and algebra is useless. It obviously has a place, and it's very helpful for a lot of people. I just don't think it's what a general citizen needs to know. I think you can get by without knowing Algebra 3 in the modern world, but what would be far more important to teach kids in public education would at least be
how to live within your means.
Balance a budget. Here's your income. Okay, here's the situation. Here's your money. How do you finance it? How much goes to taxes? How much goes to a house? Or how much goes to paying off this? What can you afford?
We should give them a lesson right now. You guys
we talked about it a little
need
bit.
to know how to budget. So let's say you're making $100 a month. 50 of those dollars are going to go into the Tesla fund. No, I'm just kidding.
Right.
Yeah,
no,
but I think budgeting is very important, and
I don't think schools
I feel
see
really
that.
lucky that like my parents, well, mostly my dad, kind of taught me like how to save up and how much money is worth. But I guess you don't really learn how much money's worth until you start working, because when you're a kid, everything kind of comes free to you. And then you're like, wow, I really took this for granted.
No, I think that would be far more helpful. I can confidently tell you I learned nothing in high school. That's not an exaggeration.
Yes, it is. I'm sure you learned something. You can't say nothing.
Not from the school. I promise you that.
You learned Spanish. Hey, you took 3 years of Spanish.
Yeah, and you know how fluent
Hola.
of Spanish I am.
¿Cómo estoy?
Está bien. But I could answer that before high school.
I just asked, how am I?
And I couldn't give you an answer.
You said está bien. So I think that means she...
You said, how am I? And I said...
She is doing well. She is well. No, estoy is I am well.
I've learned nothing. That proves my point.
I was making a joke. If anyone watches Arrested Development, there was a part where, oh gosh, the one with the glasses who's kind of like slow, he went to this party and he lost his glasses. He was standing by this like chip bowl or something. And he thought it was a person. He was like, ¿Cómo estoy? Because he was asking the chip bowl, how are you? But he was saying him. Sorry, it's a really complicated joke.
There's a question. What's your opinion on private versus public schools?
I think
I'm kind of split on that.
Yeah. I'm sure there are pros to both. I'm personally glad I went to a public school.
How come?
more freedom, I guess.
Like what? What kind of freedom do you
First of
prefer?
all, clothing. You can choose what you want to wear.
Okay.
And I feel like in private school, teachers would probably care more and like
Oh, really?
watch you closely. But I'm kind of glad that my teachers didn't care that much. Is that bad?
So there was more freedom in the classroom because you could like do whatever you wanted.
Sometimes.
There was less discipline, you'd say?
Yeah. And it probably wasn't as hard as private school.
Okay. Yeah, I'm tough. I'm split on it too because I hated public school. I did not enjoy it. But I also thought that it was healthy to be surrounded in, I would say, the real world. You know, I kind of have a concern about or kids growing up in a controlled environment that's separate from what I think society and reality is really like. Because then one day you are going to have to be part of everyday public society and reality and not be in a controlled environment. And if you grew up in a controlled environment and things were all disciplined and behaved a certain way, once you're out in the open, it'll have a certain shock factor with it. And you'll be used to everything working and everyone behaving a certain way. And when it's suddenly not that, it can be kind of shocking to that person. And
It's kind of like the military. Like
sure,
how
a little bit.
Ross was used to everyone having like short hair and like being in regulations.
Yeah, he pointed that out a lot.
Yeah.
He's like, I'm used to everyone having short hair.
It's weird seeing all these long-haired people.
But yeah, I would say the for the schools and stuff, it can shape a person a different way, and almost to a certain extent, not necessarily that they're shocked and they're not comfortable in public and society and seeing people act differently and act not the way they were raised.
Do you
but
feel
also,
like they look down on people who
yeah, I was
aren't?
going to say they can get judgmental. If they grew up in a controlled environment and they like it and they are used to that controlled environment, once they step out of it, now they see that as lesser, or they see that as worse, or that environment or this society is not as good as I am. And I don't, like, as a potential parent one day, I don't want to raise a kid thinking that they're above everyone else or they're better than everyone else. So
Yeah.
I
I don't
think,
want to generalize and say that everyone who goes to private school thinks they're
No.
better. There are certainly like people who probably come from like a lower income class
sure.
that, I don't know, somehow made it there. I know they have like grants for that.
A private school is very general. It's not very specific when you say private school. That can mean a lot of different things.
It's a school you have to pay to attend.
Right.
That's not
But,
college.
But there can be fairly affordable private schools, and there can be super expensive.
Is there
private
such
schools.
thing as an affordable private school?
I'm sure it's a
I don't know about
spectrum.
that.
That's all I'm saying. Is like just like colleges, there's cheap ones and pricey ones, and so I'm just talking in general. What would you define the differences between experience wise? Obviously, it's like paid versus public, but I mean, but besides societal and community based, what's the difference between a private and public school experience? Maybe this is a good question for the chat too.
What do you mean societal versus?
Like what differences are there versus public versus private? Ultimately, it's a school with teachers and kids. What's the big difference other than the
Probably
paid?
teachers have more incentive to like help the students grow, help them learn, versus public schools, because you know those teachers are paid by the government, not by the people attending the school.
Okay.
So private schools, I think, tend to rely a lot more on like donations and obviously the tuition of going there. So
Well, that's the format, but what about the experience for the student? What's the environment change for them
teachers
compared to?
care more.
Okay, so you would
Teachers
say
are
better
pouring more
education.
into them. Yeah.
Okay.
I'd probably say it's better. I went to private school for 2 years, but
Oh,
this
you
was
did. Okay.
in the Philippines, and it was also like first and second grade. So obviously you don't really learn much.
Long time ago.
I learned how to do cursive, which some people didn't learn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basic math. They taught us some English and also like my native language, my old language. So they're teaching 2 languages, which is pretty cool. I don't know a lot of public schools that do that for someone, for
it's
like
pretty rare.
young kids.
At that age, yeah, it's pretty uncommon. So you would just say it's a higher quality of education. That's the main.
Yeah,
that's the main difference.
generalizing. I don't have
Okay.
much personal experience like
Okay.
in the higher grades. Michael Lipp has a good comment.
Mm-hmm.
He says often private schools are more a tight-knit community, and it fosters relationship building with both teachers and the entire student body.
Right. And Paul
That's good.
went along with that to say that there's less students per teacher, which I have heard, as both my parents are teachers, that it can result in a higher quality experience when there's less kids per classroom, because you can be more, like you said, closely engaged with the teacher, because obviously this saying isn't exactly true. It's a huge generalization, but they always say that the classroom moves as fast as the slowest kid, because you can't leave any of the kids behind, which means that the kid that this is easy for isn't being challenged, and the kid that this is hard for always feels like he can't keep up. So as soon as you have a lower number of kids per classroom, they can all move at a more steady rate that they're accustomed to. So,
do you feel like the people or the kids who can't keep up as much, or like, do you think there should be more segregation in like
I'll be careful with how I answer that.
Intellectual, like
intellectual
speed. Like if there's half the class that learns quickly and half the class needs more time to learn, do you feel like it would be beneficial to the students as well as the teachers to have them separated?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of interesting theories on how education should be structured differently than it is today. And one of them I heard was that we all go by age, which they think should be changed. Some people say that like we assume that everyone in a certain age group thinks the same way, which isn't true. You can be a lot smarter than someone else who's a lot older than you. So I've seen pitches that say via standardized testing, which we all have to do eventually in some way, shape, or form. You may not like it, but that's kind of how the state figures out what you know and what you don't know. But using that, you could figure out what grade someone should be placed in based upon how intelligent they are in different topics. So if you're kind of ahead of your class, then maybe you shouldn't, for lack of other terms in the U.S. we call them grades. You shouldn't go through the first or second grade. We think you're doing better, and we think you're ready for this grade, which you'll be around different people and different ages.
Actually, I don't think that's how it should be.
How do you think?
I kind of agree with the age thing. In a social aspect, I feel like someone who's young, who's intelligent, and is beyond their years could feel ostracized. Like if they skipped 5 grades, they're as smart as everyone, but they can't socially connect with them, considering they're in different stages of life. Like if you're a 12-year-old who's in college, like how can you feel like you belong there? I don't know. Maybe I'm projecting, but
well, that could be a problem anywhere, really.
Yeah, but I feel like, I don't know, socially and emotionally, I feel like it's better to keep like ages together.
Okay. Yeah, I personally, growing up, I didn't enjoy being in classes with people my age, because I always felt, I don't mean this in a judging way, but I just felt maturity-wise I wasn't with them. You notice that even today, all my friends and all the people I hang out with are typically not my age. And it's for the most part that I just didn't feel, how did you say, acquainted, or I didn't feel
like socially connected
to people in my class, even though I was technically, we're all born in 98 or whatever, but I didn't feel like I belonged there. So I would be fine if they divided it more based on either maturity or intelligence than just what year you were born, in my opinion. But I can see the counter argument.
I'm not saying socially, it should completely be one way or the other. Obviously, every case is going to be different.
Sure.
But
absolutely.
I'm also thinking of if you were not progressing as fast as the rest of your class, as your peers, then you'd probably feel really bad if you're like the only one left behind. Let's say you're not very, like, maybe you can be intelligent without being book smart. So let's say you were held back like 3 years, then you might feel really like outcasted and not feel like you're progressing as fast as your peers, and that might give you low self-esteem. And I'm not saying we should give everyone like, participation ribbons, but I feel like it's kind of like how in our classes, at least at my school, we used to have mentally challenged kids also join us.
Yeah.
That way they could know what it's like to be in a normal classroom and kind of like get them integrated. And even though they couldn't exactly learn everything we learned, at least they felt like, they're a part of the group. Maybe that's a bit of an extreme example, but that's what came to mind.
Yeah, we had that a lot.
In the chat.
Hey, there's a teacher.
He says, what does he say?
Personality and the artistry that comes from it is different than discovery.
That's too deep.
He's thinking on a different level. I can't comprehend.
Personality and artistry comes from is different than discovery?
Yeah, I definitely don't think testing is a great indicator of what someone's capable of other than a test.
Although it does make you feel good when you're like, whoa, I scored in the highest percentile.
Oh, yeah. Some people live for that, and I knew them. I knew those people in high school. And
That's probably me.
I can tell you where a lot of them are now. It's funny.
Really? Are they succeeding in life? Is there...
I can tell you that I haven't noticed that people who did well on tests ended up being successful people. I can confirm that. There are plenty of people I knew that were vastly better students than me that didn't end up going anywhere.
Right.
And what I mean by that is just they didn't end up taking. They didn't go to high-end colleges, or they ended up working normal everyday jobs. But I know people that were just super passionate about testing and getting the highest scores possible and the SAT scores and passing through this and this. And it's not like they all failed. I do know people who were really good test takers that ended up in high-end colleges and graduated and got great degrees and things like that and good jobs. But I'm just saying it wasn't all of them. Definitely wasn't all of them. I always
correlation is not causation.
Yes, exactly. I don't see a ton of people that were ace students all resulting in successful careers. So it's clearly like you can be a great student and not a great well, I don't want to say it like it's a
right. There's still a chance for them to be successful, and
sure.
Success is actually a very personal thing. Like what one person thinks is
That's
success
true.
can be different to another person.
That's true.
And how do you attribute your success, or where do you think your success came from? Is it this like internal drive in you that you wanted to just reach further than everyone thought that you would be able to reach, or do you think it was the people that poured into you? What are some of the things that helped you become successful?
I think that's a great point. The definition of success is, I think, very different for everyone.
Yes. So what is
for me,
what is your definition?
My definition of success is you're actively doing what you wanted to do, like what you're seeking out, what you wanted to find in life. And I think last time I told you that, you were kind of confused. You were like, so if you wanted to sit on the couch all day and eat chips and watch TV, that you're a success? And I said, if that's all you strive to do and that's all you ever wanted to do, then in your own mind, you are a success because you've succeeded in the goals that you've set for yourself.
But success is subjective. So what you think is success
I don't attach it to money. I don't attach it to health. I don't attach it to things. It's just, what do you want? Are you getting that?
Right.
That's what success is.
But I'm saying outsiders looking in would look at that person sitting on the couch eating chips and watching TV as not being successful. They're not.
I'd be there too. I wouldn't see that as successful because that's not my definition of success.
But they could think they're successful in themselves.
That's right. So how about you? What's your definition?
Didn't answer my second question.
Oh, sorry.
What do you think contributed to your success growing up, or do you think it's something that's just innately in you?
Oh no, it's
that you were like destined to be successful.
Yeah, that gets deep. It's a huge combination of things. I don't think it's one factor only. It's not like I was just so determined and that's why I'm successful. It had a lot to do with my upbringing, and I owe a lot of to who I am to my parents and how they raised me. I feel like that's probably one of the biggest factors that ended up making me who I am. I do disagree with 80% of success is luck. I don't agree with that. I don't think there's that much luck involved with success.
I'd say maybe like 10% is luck. The rest is your attitude and how much work you're willing to put into something.
I think luck can vary heavily on what what you strove to do. I think for huge celebrities like musicians, I think luck might play a much higher factor. But to different careers, it might have very little. The luck might be very little involved, and someone maybe have been incredibly unlucky in their life and still succeeded.
Michael says, can I read his comment real
Sure,
quick?
go
He
ahead.
says, a lot of success stories come from people being in the right place at the right time. And in some cases that might be true, but those people were usually prepared for the success they were about to get. Like, for example, Drew has been working behind the scenes for years on YouTube without...
And I wouldn't consider my YouTube success luck.
Right.
Especially given how long I did it.
At some point, like, you know, lightning struck and all the work that he put into it had finally paid off.
Right, but where was the lightning rod? You know, that's kind of the difference. Is there's a little bit, there's very few people whose success clearly comes from like all majority luck, but there's a certain amount of work that has to be put in order for success to take place. You know, if I would have not actively tried to grow my channel and my network and my views, then the lightning would not have struck, you know? So if you use that example of like, I'm just waiting for that moment, it's like, are you waiting for something to happen to you, or are you going to happen to something? That's the way I look at it. Are things going to happen to you, or are you going to happen to things? That's kind of how I see people who would say, I'm not a success, or I want to do this great thing, but I can't because it hasn't happened to me. Because that's why
You're like stopping yourself. You're limiting.
Yeah. I think it's a very, what do you call it, limiting / damaging mindset of saying that like, well, it's got to happen someday.
Right. Someone else is going to hand me the
Right.
opportunity versus I'm going to go out, create the opportunity for myself.
Carpe
And that's exactly
diem.
what you did.
Seize the day. And I would not say that I blew up on YouTube or I got successful on YouTube just because I got lucky. I don't think that was it at all. There was years and years of trial and failing and uploading and no views and no success and failure
Right.
and failure and failure
I think maybe luck still does have a part in it, though, because there are people who put in as much work as you do and never get to the point where you are now. So how do you can't explain, like, if you work really hard, you're going to get there. Because for some people, it's just not going to happen.
Well, people work hard and people work smart.
Right.
There's lots of different
So do you
methods
feel
of
like
working.
you worked smarter than you did hard, or both?
There's a combination of both, but ultimately you need to work smart and hard in order to get to ultimately where you want to go. And I think that there are people who can work really, really hard. You know, like if my dad's watching this, what one of his old expressions was like, you can his definition of work was, correct me if I'm wrong, Dad, but I think it was effort plus effort times distance. You know, like pushing something, you're doing work. Like you can push really, really hard on a wall, but if it's not moving, you're not getting work done. You're just exerting a ton of effort. So I could see a lot of people working that way is like, well, I'm just going to keep pushing on this wall and hope that one day it falls over. Even if there's a, you know, like this is an extreme dumbed down metaphor, but you've got a sledgehammer on the other side of the room. And if your goal, your objective, your definition of success is to knock down that wall, you can use both your hands and push as hard as you can. And you can get a good grip on the floor and push and push and push, but you're just working hard. You're not working smart. You're not using
So in your
exterior
case,
tools
how did you push past the wall? How did you break that barrier?
For me specifically, I think it was trying things. It was not being afraid to mix up the formula or trying different attempts at things. Because if anyone remembers the story of Tailosive, I just wanted to make movies, you know, comedy skits, action scenes in feature films that weren't even comedy.
Right.
That was my end goal. And I was just going to start uploading them to YouTube and hope for the lightning.
Something, right.
Hope for the success.
Something would stick.
That would be me, and if one of them blew up and turned into a huge success, that would be that would be a luck thing.
So for you, you diversified your content that way, was attracting multiple kinds of audiences.
Trying to work smarter, trying to use that sledgehammer,
that's good.
trying to look at the tools and be like, okay, so this isn't working. I've done this for years. No one's watching the videos. What's a different approach? What can I try besides this? And for me, that was, well, think about it. Why should someone watch you? you're just uploading. You're a kid, and it's just some kid playing around in the backyard with airsoft guns.
Yeah.
Why on earth would someone watch that? Who cares about you? No one's looking for that. No one goes on YouTube and searches Tailosive. That's a made-up word. So with that mindset, I went, okay, I need to start making things that people are searching for. No one's searching for clone army fight, the war zone movie, no one's doing that, but maybe someone's looking up iPhone 6 thoughts, iPhone unboxing, iPad Pro review, that's when I
easily.
Yeah. I started thinking these are things people are searching for. And you also have to remember, like, those tech videos did not blow up instantly. It was a good, long time before anyone started watching the videos.
So were you discouraged by the slow growth over the years? I mean,
Absolutely.
you had put like 6 years into this before
Absolutely.
even getting a drop of anything back.
And there are a ton of YouTubers with very different stories that I think luck played a much bigger factor in. I found the most discouraging thing growing up, actually, was hearing about YouTubers' success stories when they would say that they just made videos for fun and then they happened to explode.
Yeah.
I just heard someone talk about that on the Viper live stream yesterday. They were just like, I just made a video for fun. I didn't want to make money. I just uploaded it, and then all of a sudden it blew up, and I was like, oh.
It's that easy.
You can make money from it? That's cool. And so many people have that story. PewDiePie has that story. He wasn't doing it for money or to grow a business. He just did it for fun. And here I was. I mean, I was having fun doing it, but ultimately I wanted it to be a job. I was uploading videos desperately, hoping to get growth and to get watch time.
Because you had this vision for what you wanted your life to be. And yeah, for a lot of people on YouTube, that wasn't their vision. It was just something that they did as a hobby, and somehow...
For me, the objective wasn't just for fun. It was like, no, I want this to be a job.
You were intentional about it.
Right. And I just wanted to keep trying and keep looking and keep seeing different things. And if the tech channel wouldn't have worked, I would have tried something else probably. I don't know what, but I can tell you that my motivation of like trying new things and doing different things to see what worked, that motivation would have still been there. So
right.
Yeah.
So where do you see Tailosive going in the future? If it became successful but beyond your wildest imaginations, what do you consider?
That'd be pretty huge because I have wild imaginations.
Tell us.
My end goal is still to be able to make feature films. That's still like I have a ton of ideas for big budget, not indie, not small, like enormously high budget feature films that battle with difficult morals and ideas. And superhero movies essentially. Yeah, kind of like deep. Kind of think amongst the sub YouTubers, you're certainly one of the best success stories. Thank you, Ben. The great thing about that story is it's still going. It's still happening.
Yeah.
And we're still growing happily, and I'm very grateful for our growth, and I think we're doing amazing. But the end goal would still be that Tailosive can become so large and generate such an income that I have the finances to produce and release feature films that millions of people could watch and talk about and enjoy, kind of like a mixture between superhero movies and Black Mirror, kind of, deep thinking movies that make you think but are also entertaining.
Yeah.
I have a lot of those ideas in my head that I've always wanted to make, and I tried to make them when I was little and ultimately said, no one's going to take you seriously. You're a little kid. You don't have the money. You're going to have to make a plan to see how that's possible one day. And there were a lot of different routes to executing that plan. For a long time, I thought it was film school and learning from professors and that. And,
but then your sister went to a film school, and then... Not
just my sister, but a lot of people I knew. I had a cousin that went to film school. I had a friend that went to film school. And I just saw that they weren't making movies. Not that they weren't inspiring people, and I love my sister, and she's still a huge inspiration to me, and I love her. But ultimately, I noticed that people weren't interested in making movies after they had gone through film school.
Why do you think that is?
I think
had the creativity been sucked out of them because they were too focused on like the structure of getting good grades and getting the assignment done that they couldn't be creative anymore?
I think that's part of it. I think that being in the Hollywood industry, you find out how corrupt and sad it is. Once you get involved in Hollywood, you start to realize like it's not really what you know, it's who you know, and it doesn't matter if you're talented.
Yeah, it's all kind of rigged.
It's kind of a rigged system, and you basically have to be corrupt to get in. You know, you have to break the rules, and you have to suck up to people to get where you want to be, or you're lucky.
What do you mean break the rules?
Oh, I've heard stories of people who got big. I think it was even Steven Spielberg got onto big film sets by sneaking in onto different crews and pretending he was supposed to be there when he wasn't. So you had to
that's kind of like looked up about when people do that, because like wow, they really were like chasing their dream. They didn't care what.
But I think Hollywood has a lot more luck involved than talent. Right. So the ultimate reason I didn't go through with film school in Hollywood was because I thought, well, there's not guaranteed success if I go the YouTube route and I start my own business and make videos that way. But at least I'll be in control. Whatever I make, it'll be what I want to make. It won't be some other producer, some other studio's vision, which is what all my friends and family were doing in film school. They had to abide by other people's rules. So I was like, well, the budget might be smaller, but I'll be in control.
How do you see yourself getting to that point? Like saving up the money all by yourself, or getting sponsored by someone?
It's not like a one project fundraiser. I don't mean like I want to make this movie, support my GoFundMe. I mean like make a brand, make a business, make a multi-channel network.
I'm just asking, how do you think you're going to get there in this perfect scenario where you become...
Perfect scenario, we just healthfully grow at a steady rate. And
the YouTube channel?
YouTube channel, Twitch, anything. It doesn't have to be YouTube, just a business as a whole.
How would you feel if someone in Hollywood, saw your channel and reached out to you and was like, hey, I'd love to help make your dream come true. I'll sponsor you. I'll give you, $10 million to create this brand that you have a vision for.
Wouldn't be enough,
something? 10 million?
No, I'd be looking in the 100 millions of budgets for movies. But that we're talking daydream here. So I'm not guaranteeing that this is going to happen. I'm just saying.
Well, that's good to know that you
my
have
dreams
those
are
crazy
high.
Dreams.
Yeah.
I think everyone should dream big that way, even if they fall short.
Exactly. Aim high.
There's somewhere there.
Aim high and you'll land pretty high. So I don't think absolutely it'll happen, but that's just where I'm aiming. But no, it would depend heavily on the terms and conditions if someone did that.
If you're going to be boxed in your ideas.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't agree to it if I didn't have control. That's the whole reason I went with YouTube. And
how do you feel about making not Netflix, a YouTube Red original, like for your channels, one of your channels?
Yeah, like I said, if
that would be a start.
If they gave me the control I wanted, then I would do it. If not, then I wouldn't.
So it doesn't matter what the platform is that you're...
No, it could be Netflix, it could be Hulu, I don't care. Just as long as they give me authority and control over my work.
So you would be the director, or what is your
I would say maybe not director, more like executive producer, because it's more like the overseer of everything. I'm not super interested in the
details.
John Morrison or Marquez into the way things are shot or the lighting and things like that. Like I have general ideas on how I want all that to work, but for the most part, I'm more about the end vision. I figured out early in my YouTube career that I didn't enjoy the technical side of things as much. I'm interested in cameras and lenses and audio for the most part, but ultimately I care more about the message. What do people talk about after they watch my video? What did people laugh at in the Saturday short? I don't care that the Saturday short didn't have perfect audio levels. I don't care that the cinematography was kind of janky. Like, I don't care about that. I just care about, like, was it funny or was it interesting or with the tech video? So that's where my passion rides. I would probably hand off the directing position to someone else, but I really wouldn't care what if it was Disney, sure. If it was I don't know, any number of, if it was Universal, any studio really, just as long as it would let me have the control I wanted, which there would likely be a good chance of control on Netflix. I think they give a lot of control to their what's it called, directors, producers. usually the people.
Yeah, I don't really understand the difference between what they do, but I hope you get there, hon. And
Thank you.
You're taking the steps necessary to get there, because I know you want to do it like on your own volition and not have it handed to you by anyone.
Well, I wouldn't, yeah, wouldn't want it handed, but ultimately it's just the control thing. As long as I can execute my vision, my goal is not to have a Tailosive logo on everything. I hope people know that.
So this new project, will it have a different name than Tailosive?
No, I think it would be under the Tailosive branding.
Okay.
But if I had to sacrifice the Tailosive brand to get the money, as long as I got to tell the story I wanted, I wouldn't care. That's fine. But who knows? There's a lot. I don't think a lot of people understand what a director does on a film set. Director's not the guy.
Don't they say like, this is how I want it to be filmed, do it?
Well, they're in a lot of control of how the scene flows and how the actors behave. But I don't. I'm more just about the post process of how the story makes you feel and the big idea behind it. I would like to be hands on with the director, but I don't think I would want to assume the director role.
Okay.
But yeah, essentially Tailosive Productions 2.0.
Well, very cool. I'm glad to hear about your dreams, and
Thank you.
I will help you in whatever way I can to get you there.
Well, the important thing is we'll be together.
Yes, of course. I'll always be here for you.
Always.
And it's getting late, guys, so I think we should wrap up.
We're going to have to wrap up. And it's daylight savings tomorrow.
Yeah, and I'm losing an hour.
So
5 hours of sleep tonight.
Y'all get to bed, all right?
Yes.
Anywho, thank you guys for watching. We'll see you
in the next one.
Bye-bye.
Bye.